So let's start by creating a variable called input, and I will set it as empty. Then let's create a while loop. It's going to be an infinite loop until the input be equal to quit. So to be equal to quit, we're going to say not equal to quit, because the first time that it will run, the input is not equal to quit and the loop will run. After the loop has started, I want to say input going to be equal to window.prompt. So window.prompt will open up a window for the user, and the user can input a value. Then that value will be stored inside our input variable. Now we want to store that variable inside somewhere. So let's just create an array. So we create an array by saying const, let's call it values, and I will set it equal to an empty brackets. This will create an array for us. Now inside our loop, I will say values dot push, and I want to push the input value that the user has entered inside the window.prompt be stored inside our values. But there is a problem here, and that is the input variable that we are getting from the user is by default a string. So the value that the user enters inside our window is by default a string, and we want to turn it into a number. So what we can do, we can say parse, and we have parse int and we have parse float. The difference between parse int and parse float is that parse float will get the decimals as well. So in parse int, we cannot have decimals. So in this case, because we're going to get average and we might have decimals, I will use parse float. And for now, let's just console.log our values so we can see how it looks like. Let's save it and hit refresh. We have a window. Let's call 10, 20, 50, and 2.5. Okay, so this is our array, and you can see each time I'm adding a value, it's adding it to the array and it's printing it out. Now let's type quit to get out of the loop, and the last value will be nan, because the quit will be added to the values as well, and it is saying that it is not a number, and we don't want the values that are not a number be added to our array. So what we can do, we can say if we have a function in JavaScript called isNan, and it will detect if the value is a number or not. Here we put our input, and if our value is not a number, it will return true, and the if statement will be executed. But we don't want it to be executed when it is true. We want it to be executed when it is not a nan. So we will put an exclamation mark before our condition, and it will check for the opposite of our condition. So now the condition is true when our input is a number, and if it was, it will add it to our values. Let's save and test it again, and here I will say 10, and let's add blah blah blah, and it will not be added to our array. And if I say quit, it will not be added to our array. Now that we know our code is working fine, let's get out of the loop, and we want to sum all of the values inside our array. So let's create a variable called sum, and I'm gonna say values dot for each, and we will put a function inside of it. One default value will be the element inside our array that is getting processed. Let's put our curly brackets for our function. So inside here, I want to say for each of my values, I want you to say sum gonna be plus equal to that value. So each value gonna be added to our sum. Now the sum is equal to the addition of all the values inside our array. So now the last step is to create another variable. Let's call it result, gonna be equal to the sum value divided by values length. So we can get an average of all of our inputs. And let's show the result to our user, console.log result. Alright, now if I save and refresh, I put 10, 20, and 30 and quit. It is showing us not a number, and that is because when we creating sum and not setting it equal to 0 or any number, the default type when we are adding a value to it will be string. So if we set it equal to 0, refresh, now add the values again, you can see it's working fine. So this is the average of the values that we entered. If you like this type of video that I'm creating and you want to support me, you can just like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.